Welcome to the Peace Building Podcast. Join host Susan Coleman as she interviews today's most creative, courageous, and sometimes outrageous mediators, coaches, entrepreneurs, and out-of-the-box thinkers whose work, whether intended or not, is building peace. Tune in for 45 minutes of pure inspiration as we explore the best stories, the best practices, the best ideas of a new world emerging. Here's your host, global consultant, coach, facilitator, and mediator, Susan Coleman.
So welcome, Pablo, to the Peace Building Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Susan, for inviting me.
Yeah, you are, as one of my oldest and dearest friends and colleagues, and so it's really an honor always to have you on the show, to have somebody with the depth of experience that you have. And I mean, I was looking over just knowing your journey, and of course I don't know it as well as you do, but it's just a really deep and interesting journey, and so I'm really looking forward to what you have to say about this, and whether you may not, I don't know whether you even identify with the term peace building, but certainly you've been in the world of negotiation, conflict resolution, transformation for a long, long time. Does that sound accurate?
Yes, absolutely, and thank you for inviting me. I mean, I'm very proud that my friend is doing is putting together an endeavor like this. So if I can help in any way, it would be very exciting.
So I wanted to just share with the listeners your bio because it's really pretty short and sweet, and it's a beautiful bio. Really, it's a really beautiful bio. It's just so succinct and so I'm going to say, so anyway, Pablo, so for over 20 years, I've had the joy and privilege of being a consultant, practitioner, and professor in negotiation strategy, innovation, leadership, and teamwork. Together with my partner, Stephanie Walcott, we lead an international consulting boutique, Aluna Catalyst, and have built a smart and passionate team. Our mission is to contribute to social prosperity by transforming one organization and one leader at a time. Nice. My ongoing commitment is to offer to as many organizations and people as possible essential approaches to build a better world and overcome the complex challenges we face to create a sustainable society. On this journey, I have worked with a wide range of organizations from multinational corporations to government agencies to the United Nations to local communities. I am a cultural translator, I like that term, a mediator, a negotiator to help everyone work towards a shared purpose and mutual prosperity. For the past 2 decades, I have been invited to teach and facilitate at universities around the world, Kellogg School of Management, Colombia-U.S, Universidad de los Andes, and McGill University. Being both an academic and a practitioner allows me the ability to offer a richer viewpoint and a more informed, systemic perspective to my students and my clients. So then you go on to basically, you've been a founder, and you are, just for 3 months, you've been the founder and chief of Catalyst. I like this, you are the chief catalyst at Aluna Catalyst.
Yes.
I like that phrase.
Actually was the idea of my partner Stephanie, and she helped me with the bio to give you full disclosure. She writes much better in English than I do, so I wrote the structure and she helped me polish that, which she did a very good job at.
Well, what's really stands out, so anyway, and then you are a professor at McGill. You've done that for 14 years, teaching complex negotiation. And you're a professor de cátedra. I don't know what that means.
Oh, yeah. Cátedra means is an elegant name to call you a part-time professor at the Universidad de los Andes.
It sounds good, though.
Yes.
I teach. So you've been doing that at Universidad de los Andes for a long time, and then the thing that's interesting is that you just recently you were the CEO for Tandem Insourcing for how many years? 15 years.
Yeah, 15
something
years.
Like that. Yeah. And so what's really noticeable to me as your colleague and friend is that this is quite a transformational bio, in the sense that before you were very hardcore negotiation person, really, you've always been, in my mind, the person who teaches and trains in negotiation better than anybody I know.
That's very kind.
Well, no, I think it's accurate.
And
So
we have had a lot of fun together. So yes,
we have. We've but it really stands out, the transformation of sort of a hardcore business person in negotiation, leadership development. Well, actually, I don't know if you.
The negotiation and strategy mostly.
Yeah.
And I think it summarizes my journey fairly well, in the sense that I started as more of a technical person. I have an engineering background, I have a business background, to hopefully becoming more aware and more of a spiritual person. And I think that's what the most interesting part of my journey has been. Of course, I'm interested in peace. That has to do with sustainability, to transforming leaders, to transforming organizations, and that's how I started my journey, I suppose, with that idea. I think at the beginning I did it more for myself, in the sense that it sounded fun to be a consultant. It sounded sort of elegant to be a professor, and of course you know the story. Your colleague. And you opened the door for me as an international academic when you invited me to train for Teachers College in the contract you had with the United Nations, which was a really fascinating experience. Both the times I had the opportunity to teach with you, but also the experience of having this idea of the United Nations being this incredible body of possibilities to contribute to peace, and realizing that in reality, when we taught conflict resolutions, and this is my perspective, but I have shared it with you a few times, we realized that people were more interested in using conflict resolution skills to solve organizational problems than to take them to the field and see if they could contribute to peace by doing what the United Nations should be doing, which is working in the field. And that's, one first reflection, which was, it surprised me quite a bit that these people who work in the United Nations were frustrated because they could not do well what they came to do, which was work in the field, help people, help countries develop, and they were spending a lot of their energy in internal politics and solving petty issues, which is like, why do I not get the corner office? That was sort of really, really surprising for me, and that's an experience I shared with you at that time. So I guess my journey somehow has been more a journey of becoming more aware, more. I don't want to say the word enlightened because it sounds sort of pretentious to me.
It's okay.
It's more aware.
We're all trying to head in that direction.
More conscious. Mm-hmm. And I get the change from Tandem to Aluna has to do with that. Aluna is a Kogi world.
Sorry, is it what? Is it what?
Kogi are the Indians who are in La Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, which is the highest peak in the world next to the ocean.
Yeah.
It's a single mountain. Colombia is traversed by La Cordillera de los Andes, but La Sierra Nevada is not part of La Cordillera de los Andes. It's the highest peak in Colombia. It's 6,000 some meters, 6,500, 600, I should know my geography, but 6,600 sounds about right. And the Kogis have been always guarding that mountain. They had to fight with big organizations like Oxy. I remember when I heard about that struggle between the Kogis and Oxy. Oxy
is what kind of an organization, Pablo?
Occidental Petroleum, the fourth largest oil company in the world, in the U.S. at least. And I remember that my thought was, well, yes, I understand that indigenous tradition is very important, but development is very important too. And if Oxy is going to look for oil in Colombia, that's good for Colombia. That was my thought then. Being less informed about these things, perhaps. And now I realize that, they were right. And we chose Aluna. Aluna means a space of transcendence. The Kogi made a movie, actually. It's worth watching.
I actually think I've seen it. I think a friend of mine has been working with them, and I think I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes. And actually, they paid for the documentary. They paid themselves for it. And it's about, trying to make Western, what they call small brothers, because they call themselves big brothers, because they are there to guard us, more enlightened about the relationship with nature. And of course, La Sierra Nevada is a fundamental part of the Colombian ecosystem, because a lot of the water around that area comes from La Sierra Nevada. And that's what they've been guarding. So we chose Aluna because of the Kogis. And it means, as I said, a space of transcendence. And Catalyst, because Catalyst is an agent of change, and is more the technical part. So Aluna is the spiritual part, Catalyst is the technical part. So going back to your question about peace, yes, of course, living in a country as complex as Colombia, where we have drugs and drug lords and left-wing guerrillas, and not only one group, but two groups of left-wing guerrillas and paramilitaries. And of course, you cannot work in negotiation without thinking about conflict resolution, about how you can contribute to the peace process. And I tried. When they started in negotiations, I even tried to get involved in the peace process, but somehow they did not want my help, which is fine.
Why do you? That's interesting. Why not? I would think they would.
I think. They have. My sense is they have a very good team of people behind the peace process. So probably they didn't need any more experts in negotiation. I was contacted at some point to see if I could help them. I wish I could have gotten involved, but the opportunity did not present itself. It's an opportunity that didn't work for me in a field where I'm supposed to be an expert.
You are an expert.
Thanks. But looking back at the work we've done together and all the work I've done in negotiation. Of course, negotiation techniques are and strategies and the approach we use, which is more systemic, is something I strongly believe in as being very useful for conflict resolution, for building consensus, for helping people reach complex agreements. Working in the free trade agreement, as you remember, was fascinating. It was an opportunity that presented itself sort of fortuitously.
I obviously know that. Say a little bit. What did you do with the free? You were doing what?
It all started because I've been a professor at the University of Los Andes for a long time, and the vice minister of commerce was looking for someone to train her team of negotiators at that point in negotiation. And we started training the team that was going to negotiate with the United States a free trade agreement jointly with Peru and Ecuador, because it was a joint negotiation between the three countries. And we did a few workshops, and someone really fascinating, was a person I respect a lot, Hernando Jose Gomez, came to replace the person who had hired us. I don't remember her name, the vice minister, as the chief negotiator for the free trade agreement for Colombia. And he's a very, he's been working for the public sector for all his life, but he's very exceptional in the sense that he's not a politician. He has no interest in working for the government, different than doing his best job for Colombia. So it was a privilege to work with him, because we got this very disciplined economist leading the very serious economist, very ethical economist leading the free trade negotiation, and he realized he needed help. So we kept on training his team, something like 150 people, and then he got excited and says, "Okay, we don't only need to train, but we need to strategize." So we started helping with the strategy. And it ended up being an incredibly complex negotiation and you don't realize it when you begin. When we started, we were just going to do a training, which we did a lot of. And then we started helping him, and we realized this was the most complex negotiation we had ever been involved with, because we had to negotiate, of course, with the U.S., but that was the least of our problems. We had to negotiate internally between the different ministries, which are sort of like the secretaries, are what you call secretaries, we call here ministers, to align them around one approach to the free trade negotiation. And what we needed to do is to create a flexible mandate from the government for the negotiators. And you know that when people try to create mandates which are simple by giving their negotiators or their agents positions. But you know, when we negotiate based on positions, you have not much flexibility to be creative, to find win-win solutions. You're very much stuck, and you end up in a typical power and rights-based negotiation. So the first thing that he understood, and the president of Colombia then, President Uribe, understood was that if we were given a mandate based on issues, interests, and priorities, we would have a mandate which was going to be much more flexible and still protect Colombia's interests. So that was our first job, which was to align all the different ministers around a single mandate. Of course, the agricultural minister had his own priorities, the commerce minister had his own priorities, the minister of finance has his own priorities, the minister of defense has his own priorities. So we had to align all those people working with the vice ministers.
Yeah, it comes a question, which is the harder negotiation, the internal one or the...
And usually the internal one ends up being the hardest, and if you don't do a good job, then negotiating with your counterpart becomes very, very difficult.
Well, and then you had to move from the internal negotiations to then the Indian.
Yeah, and we had to just in a nutshell, we had to negotiate with the ministries, we had to negotiate with the entrepreneurs and the private sector, with the civil society, with all the legal arm of the government, because they had to control the process to make sure there was not going to be any interest, conflict of interest being misguiding the decisions of the free trade negotiations. That we had to align our strategy with Ecuador and Peru, and we had to convince them again that we should not negotiate based on positions but based on interest, and that's a whole a whole big challenge. And then you have to engage with the U.S. Having a major asymmetry of power, because the U.S. is our main trading partner. What the U.S. At that point, the gross national product of Colombia was 2 days of the gross national product of the United States, so the asymmetry was clear. Mm-hmm. But it was a beautiful process because we managed to really create a whole different approach to negotiation, first within the Colombian team, then with Ecuador and Peru, and eventually with the U.S. And we managed to move them from positions to interest much more. And it was a very fascinating educational process for us, because we learned a lot about how to do it, but for everybody involved, because they realized that the approach was better.
I actually want you to tell the piece about the part in Cartagena and the DSA, because I know this story and it's just a great...
Which one? The one the first meeting we had?
Yeah. About making sure that everybody didn't come back with any DSA.
Yes. One of the things we did, which was quite effective, is we agree on a process. But we agree on a process in the way you've taught me about negotiation processes, which is, you focus on the process, not on the outcome, and you have a relationship building phase, an information exchange phase, a reframing phase, a negotiation phase, an agreement phase. So we were trying to convince both Ecuador and Peru, but all our negotiators, to focus on the process and not on the outcome. And I was in charge of writing the objectives for each meeting. And the first meeting was in Cartagena. And the purpose of that meeting was exclusively relationship building. And of course, that's something we had in mind, but that wasn't the Ecuadorian agenda or the Peruvian agenda, and much least the U.S. agenda. The U.S. wanted to move this forward fast.
Let's get to the point.
So what the chief negotiator told, given the instructions I wrote, the chief negotiator told its people was, okay, your instruction is you cannot come with any money back in your pocket. I think you call it DSA, right?
Yeah, the daily subsistence allowance. Yeah, organizations, they give you a certain amount of money to cover your hotel and your food, and yeah.
And here in Colombia, government functionaries can keep the money they don't spend. They can keep whatever per diem they don't spend.
Right.
So the instruction was you need to spend all your per diem dining and wining and dancing with the U.S. Representatives. And the incredible thing is it made a difference because we created a very strong bond between the U.S. negotiators and the Colombian negotiators and the Ecuadorian negotiators and the Peruvian negotiators, which helped us along the road downstream the negotiation process when we had conflicts. Having such a strong relationship really helped move forward and overcome the obstacles that are natural to such a complex negotiation. So yes, it was an incredible experience because here I am, a young professor at Universidad de los Andes, and I get to play in what I love doing, which is a negotiation process, a major negotiation process, and I get to apply all the stuff we teach. Yeah. And see some of that stuff work, and most of it actually. I mean, it is fascinating that most of that stuff works.
It was really an amazing experience, and I wonder now, like with 2020 hindsight, because this is a podcast about peace building, if there are any thoughts. When you think about that process, any insight you have about building peace.
I mean, as you know, I worked with ex-combatants, and I had the privilege to train them using your model, actually, at that point, your conflict resolution model, more than my negotiation or our negotiation model, with ex-combatants from the ELN, the FARC, and the M-19, which was, the M-19 was the one of the first groups to demobilize under President Gaviria. And I mean, the skill, I mean, we were training in conflict resolution skills, in basic conflict resolution skills. And my sense is, I mean, these were people like you and I, and what was different between them and us, it was basically belief systems. They believe in something different. And for them, the peace wasn't what we necessarily thought it would be. I mean, I remember I was really surprised because, you come with a Western mindset, you come with a business mindset, and you think it's about, money and about economic opportunities. But for these kids, it was a lot about prestige and recognition. And they were in the guerrilla because they were respected. And now that they were demobilized, the hardest thing they had to deal with was they had lost their sense of identity, the sense of purpose. I mean, you may agree with what their purpose was or not, but they felt they had lost their sense of purpose. And more than money or jobs, they needed to feel respected and feel that they had a place in society, whatever that meant to them. I mean, when they were in the guerrilla, it meant being part of the insurgent group, but being in the city, they felt lost. But I mean, looking at the Colombian peace process, and I don't know the details of how they are approaching everything, of course, because when you're negotiating such complex processes, you keep a lot of things confidential. I mean, that's one of the challenges we had in the free trade agreement. I'm sure is one of the challenges they're having in the peace process is how much you tell the public and how much you keep to yourself. I mean, you want a transparent process, but at the same time, you need to keep a lot of things confidential, or else you lose your negotiation leverage or negotiation capacity. But my sense is the same things that we use in the free trade, which is preparing extremely well, pre-negotiating to position ourselves strategically beforehand, building strong relationships, even with people you don't like. And I interviewed someone who negotiated in the previous peace process of Pastrana, and he told me how important it was for him to build very, very strong bonds with the guerrilleros he was negotiating with, even if he did not agree with what they believed in or what they were trying to achieve. And so the same things apply. I mean, building strong relationship, building trust, being in working relationship, exchanging information as transparently, understanding each other's interests, because you're basically problem solving, whether it's a free trade agreement or a peace process.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, there's so many different places we could go. There's so many different things we could talk about. Do you, part of me wants to go to some of your beginnings and just what was it in your, that got you interested in this whole topic of negotiate? When you look at your longer trajectory, like your early beginnings, what got you interested? Then why did you reach out to me at Columbia to try and, what got you interested in negotiation? And then you've been on this transformation now, like moving from negotiation skills to something that's much more, I think, about transformation in general, I think.
Yes.
So I don't know, when you weave the thread from the beginning to now, like what?
I think I started like a lot of people begin. I started being interested in negotiation because I felt such anxiety when I had to negotiate. And I felt I was such a bad negotiator that I'd need to learn about it. And I realized when I took one course, and I had the good luck to have Roger Fisher as my first professor in negotiation.
What, did you go to Harvard, or did he come to?
No, he came to Colombia. He came
Mm-hmm.
to Colombia. He had strong links with Colombia at some points, I think, with peace negotiations. And President Uribe really believed in the Harvard model of the 7 elements, and he really promoted it in Antioquia. And it was a big thing in Antioquia, which was then a very violent area. I mean, Pablo Escobar comes from Antioquia, so it was a very
Antioquia. Medellin is in Antioquia.
Medellin, yes, Medellin. That's exact. He promoted the Harvard model a lot. So I had the chance to train with him, and I thought he was a fascinating man. And I still think his book is brilliant and his approach is brilliant. I mean, there's a lot of criticism.
You're talking about Getting to Yes.
Getting to Yes, but I think it's still a brilliant book, and what he proposes is amazing. I mean, interest and principle-based negotiation really summarizes everything we do. I mean, interest because basically people are negotiating to achieve some type of interest, and principles because if you don't reach a principle agreement, it's not sustainable. I think that summarizes everything we try to teach. And I found it fascinating, and I found it fascinating that it was taught in a very exceptional way, in which is role play, and that makes it safe and that makes it fun. And every time you did a case, you learned. So it fascinated me, and I kept on reading, and eventually I had I've always been an entrepreneur, as you know, or at least I pretended to be an entrepreneur. And at that point, my idea of being an entrepreneur was making money. I don't know if I had it. I said it explicitly, but my idea was making money. And I went broke very catastrophically. And at that point,
got to fail early and fail often, right? That's the idea.
Yes. So it was a catastrophic financial situation. I lost my apartment. And I said, well, I have nothing to lose. What do I love doing? Well, I love teaching, and I love teaching negotiation. So I decided to give it a try. I remember I told my father, and my father looked at me very concerned and very father-like, and he says, well, he's probably in his mind he was thinking, oh, I'm sorry, you're a failure, but go and teach negotiation. And it sounds like a hobby more for me, but I'll support you in everything you need. He was very, very generous, and it became really, really a lifestyle entrepreneur adventure. I mean, I did much better economically doing what I loved than I ever had done trying to make money. And that's how I got involved. So I started teaching at the beginning, very responsibly, because at that point, and still there are no serious certificates for training in negotiation. And at that point, I was asking myself, how can I learn more about negotiation? I already heard about, I'd taken what I could take in Harvard. And someone told me about your colleague, Helen Rader. Rader. And I was in New York for some business meeting or for something else, and I called her and I said, I'm interested in learning more about negotiation and conflict resolution. Would you meet with me because I have some questions for you? And she very kindly said, of course. And we had an appointment, and I said, well, I want to learn more about negotiation and conflict resolution, but besides Harvard, what is there? I don't see any other programs. I didn't know about Kellogg then, or I don't know if Kellogg was training already then. Mm-hmm. And she very kindly invited me to participate free of charge in the program you guys had at Teachers College for the psychology professors. And I did your basic practicum on.
Well, it wasn't just psychology. It was teachers. It was HR professionals.
Okay, so it was brother.
Yeah, it's a teachers' college. Yeah, it's a school of education.
Yeah. So yes, of course. Now I remember. Yeah. So of course I did the first practicum, which was negotiation, and the second one, which was mediation. At that time, your father died, so I didn't get to meet you. Yeah. You were going to teach the second practicum, but your father passed away, and you had to go to the funeral, I guess, and you couldn't teach. But then, as serendipity has it, and I believe in that. I was invited to be an assistant trainer in one of your workshops. I think you were the first one I worked with for the United Nations, and that's how my relationship began with you. And from there, I met Morna, our colleague, and I was invited to teach at McGill, and that opened all these doors for me, teaching all over the world.
So where have you? Other than you and I have done a ton of work at ICTY, the International Criminal Court in The Hague, the tribunal for the United Nations.
Yes.
Done a ton of work there, and mostly I think there about never coming home with any of my per diem, because you you are such a foodie and like to have the best possible food you can have wherever you go.
We drank it all in wine.
Yeah, we did. But where else have you worked in different parts of the world?
Oh, I think probably sort of in every continent, I think, except Australia. I haven't been to Australia, but in Latin America. And it's fascinating because, you would say, well, a Colombian is very similar to a Peruvian, very similar to an Ecuadorian, and, talking about cultural differences, which is some of the topics we cover in your design. I realized that small cultural differences a lot of times were much harder to deal with than big cultural differences.
The Oscar Wilde. I don't know if you know the Oscar Wilde quote about the Brits and people from the United States, two worlds separated by a common language.
Yes, that's a good quote. So it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. And when you're going to teach in Japan, which I do because of McGill every year now, which is fascinating. I love going to Japan. You're much more aware of the fact that you're going to have to deal with cultural differences when you go to Japan than when you go to Peru. So
you're kind of more on guard or more woken up to the possibility. Yeah.
But I had the possibility. I thought I've been in Africa, I've been in Asia, I've been in Europe, I've been in Central America, I've been in the Caribbean, I've been in South America. So I've been lucky and privileged to have been able to travel. And that's what it means to be a lifestyle entrepreneur, when you do everything else that everybody have to save a lot of money for, just because you do your work. So of course, when I went to Beirut, you're teaching, but you're also having a vacation. So
of sorts. You're just having kind of an immersion vacation,
Yes.
And just such an intense experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's how it started, and then I got into other consulting topics like negotiation, strategy, innovation. But throughout, and I think negotiation has a lot to do with that. I've realized that everything you do is systemic. Everything is interconnected. they talk about bilateral negotiations, but every bilateral negotiations end up like the free trade agreement being a multilateral negotiation without stakeholders. So I think that this idea of systemic thinking is what got me into being more interested in spirituality. And my first introduction to spirituality was by my friend Andres Agudelo, my former partner, and still a very good friend at Tandem. He works with the Enneagram. The Enneagram is a personality characterization system, sort of like Myers-Briggs, but much more complex. They claim that it comes from the Sufis in Afghanistan, and I probably discovered then what having an ego was through the Enneagram. I realized there was something that made you function in automatic and gave you a very strict worldview. And it was fascinating because the way they locate you in your Enneatype, which there is 9 Enneatypes, is not by questionnaires like Myers-Briggs, but is by listening to the characteristics of that Enneatype and then working with a group of people who believes are in that Enneatype and discovering you think so much alike them. You thought you were so unique, and all of a sudden you're working with 15 other people who are exactly like you, who think like you, who are automatic like you in the same ways, and you realize, oh God, that's the ego. And that's where I started realizing that one of the most difficult things to deal in negotiation or in change management or in anything you do when you're trying to help other people develop or make decisions or reach consensus or transform themselves or transform an organization or transform a community, that for me the biggest obstacle has to do with beliefs. And I love this idea that comes from Buddhism, which it says that wisdom is triggered when you manage to completely drop your point of view, because that's when your full intelligence kicks in and you can observe a situation with your body, with your mind, with your emotions, with your instinct, with everything that composes your true intelligence. And that's where I've moved more towards. I discovered a few years ago by accident. I was reading an article from Harvard called From Object to Subject, and I discovered a guy called Kegan, which I think you know very well too.
Very well, yeah.
And I started.
You're talking about Robert Kegan? Robert
Kegan, yes. Mm-hmm. And I started realizing that all these people, Tolle, Kabat-Zinn, Ruiz, Jack Kornfield, us in negotiation, when we talk about cultural differences and worldview, we were talking about the same thing. We were talking about how people's belief system drives their decision in automatic because they're unconscious about their belief systems and they hold their beliefs as truth. And when you hold something as truth, well, it's very hard to have a rights-based discussion or a powers-based discussion because people are defending something they believe is completely unquestionable. And they feel their life goes in it, right? Their life is threatened if their belief is questioned. Mm-hmm. And so I realized that in everything we do, which means transforming the way people make decisions or do things, it always goes back to their belief system. And I think Ruiz in his 4 agreements explains it very well by saying, Who are you talking about? Ruiz. He wrote a book called The 4 Agreements.
Oh, yes, I know what you're talking, yeah.
Okay, you know him.
Yeah.
So, and he explains how we were brought up and we agreed to these belief systems that were given to us, and we ended up with a belief system that is accidental because we grew up there and we never questioned it. So now what I'm trying to incorporate into negotiation is how can you help people question their beliefs? Because a lot of times people do want to reach a deal, do want to change, but their unconscious beliefs do not let them move forward.
What does that look like in practice? Like, how have you shifted or changed how you actually work with a client?
I think I acted much more as an expert when I started. So I said, okay, I took a course at Harvard and you have to do this. You have to look at the seven elements of a negotiation. So let's begin by understanding your interests, because that's what Professor Fisher says you should do. And then I realized that wasn't effective because people do not want to be told what to do. So I moved more and things like appreciative inquiry, generative thinking, open space technology, which are much more reflective processes, started appearing in my life. And I realized that if you want to change someone's point of view or someone's perspective, the only people who can change it is themselves. Actually, when I was doing training for that with a colleague that you've met or have you heard about, and it would be someone very interesting to interview, which is Kai Vodman.
Oh yeah, you mentioned him.
Yes, his first exercise for you to become a facilitator was, okay, you need to change something in your life, which has been really scary for you, very difficult to change, because if you cannot change yourself, you cannot change anyone. And then you realize that what really helped you change was these reflective processes where you started realizing and becoming conscious about what was driving your decisions. And through questions, through reflection, you help people. You could understand things you did not understand before. So I guess moving from being an expert to being more of a facilitator and helping people reflect on things using, of course, models like, okay, what are your interests and what do you think their interests are? How can we perhaps, is there a way in which we can find a solution that works for their interests and your interests? Do you think that what you're proposing is better than their alternative? You're making people reflect and realize that, and they get, by reflecting, they understand things much better than if you tell them that a solution should be this or should be that. So I think I used that, a reflective approach, a generative approach of problem solving and problem understanding. And I'm much more conscious about approaching a situation and trying to understand what people believe the situation is and understand where they're looking at the situation from, and understanding that my job is perhaps helping them shift their understanding and shift their beliefs in relation to that situation. And I think that has a lot to do with conflict resolution. When you work with things like OS, open space technology, or future search, you always start with the future, because you know that in the future people mostly agree on what they want. They want clean air, they want peaceful surroundings, they want education for their children. What makes it much difficult is how to get there. So if you start from the future and you go back, maybe you can, if you help them create a joint vision of where they want to get to, which is sort of an agreement, then maybe building the road to that agreement is easier.
So that actually is a good segue into, and we are hitting our time boundaries. So there's two questions that I basically have been asking everybody. And one of them has to do with the future. Because of course, whenever you're intervening in any kind of complex system, one of the things you absolutely need is a compelling vision of where you're aiming and what you're doing. So I have two kind of lofty questions for you, but they're important questions. I think you've done enough conflict resolution training that you know that sometimes the word peace can feel very boring to many people. Many people
Yes.
will get I don't know, the energy is not there, or there's something about it. Maybe there are associations. It's not dynamic. There's something that doesn't seem compelling. And maybe I'm going to weave in the other question. There's two questions, and the first one is, what's your vision if, in fact, we were able to shift this planet to another level where we had pretty much found destructive conflict, the amount of energy we put into violent conflict was no longer such an area of focus, was no longer as interesting. What would we be doing? What would we be creating? What's your vision of what could be possible for this sorry and exciting race we belong to? That's one question. And I'm going to give you the other question at the same time, because I think you can probably weave them together, which is the money question. Is that I think a lot of times people think that, you can make a lot more money off of conflict than you can off of peace. And maybe that's one reason why people think peace is boring. I don't know, because you can't make as much money doing it. So I don't know what your thoughts are about those two questions.
Wow, those are.
I know they're big questions.
I cannot say they're curved balls because you did tell me you were going to ask me those questions. I haven't thought about them as much as I should now that you're asking them and I need to answer them. But I mean, I must admit that my perspective on a better world has to do with what Tolle says in his book.
You're talking about Eckhart Tolle?
Eckhart Tolle, yes, on his second book, I think the Good Earth. I've been listening to it, so I haven't seen the title, but I've listened to it like 5 times, and he says basically, I mean, climate change, violence, scarcity of resources. You're not going to change the way people deal with those issues unless they become more conscious. And one of the things that sort of gave me a frame for that was I'm part of the Kellogg Innovation Network, as you know.
The Kellogg, what did you say? The Kellogg Innovation?
Kellogg Innovation Network at Kellogg, which is a network of people from all over the world, from all types of walks, government, academy, private sector, social entrepreneurs, and
Kellogg is a business school in Northwestern.
It's one of the most prestigious business schools at Northwestern, yes, of course. And their mission is to see how they can contribute to global prosperity through innovation. That's the kin mission. And there was one government official from India, or former government official from India, and he was explaining what he believed the development model should be for India. And I don't quite remember everything he said because it was a fairly enlightened proposition and fairly complex proposition. But I remember in a position of what he said it should be. And he says, if India and China follow the development business model of consumerism of the U.S.,
consumerism
is not sustainable. And, if you want people to shift the mindset and believe, and there's a very interesting Latin American author called Maturana. They have to shift their mindset from a scarcity mindset and an accumulation mindset to a prosperity mindset. And that means that you have to realize that you can be very happy with much less things and much less money than you think you need. So I'm not saying anything very original, but I think Eckhart Tolle summarizes it very good in his book. And yes, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think that peace, unfortunately, the prison system, the war against drugs in Colombia, the peace process in Colombia, solving those issues is very bad business for a lot of people. Climate change is not solving climate change is very good business for a lot of people. But I remember reading in The Economist how some of the people who did the most lobbying so they wouldn't legalize marijuana, because at that point, that was years ago, a big part of the population in the U.S. prisons, which are privatized, I think most of them, as you may know, were marijuana offenders. And offenders of, one thing is a cocaine offender, and one thing is a cocaine drug lord, and one thing is a marijuana dealer who is growing the marijuana in his basement and selling it in whoever, his friends, and how they were lobbying against legalizing marijuana or doing harm reduction or reducing penalties for marijuana offenders, because of course they needed those people to go to prison because that was their business. So if you, and I used this example with you before, which there's always people sometimes have a hard time not making the joke of you being Colombian and having something to do with drugs. I remember one time being very upset with someone who said that.
I do know. Every time I traveled with you and every time we would arrive in any country, they would put you through such incredible ordeal just because you had a Colombian passport.
Yes, that's true. And I remember that time that person said it. Probably I was tired from jet lag, and I said, well, why would you prefer your son to have a gram of Coke or a Magnum 45? What are we talking about here? And of course, selling guns is great business for a lot of people. So, all these, a lot of the the aid that the government gave to Colombia was invested in former military who were either advising or doing operations in Colombia under contract. Mm-hmm. So of course, war is an incredible business for a lot of people. So, and in Colombia, you know that. I mean, you know that a lot of people don't want the peace process to happen because there is a business behind, or there's a lifestyle, if you prefer, behind keeping the conflict in place in Colombia. And that's one side, which is probably the most perverse one. But also, I think a lot of people are afraid because they're ignorant, because they don't understand what peace means, because they don't understand who these guerrilleros are, which are just kids that were recruited and had no other options. And I think that has to do with belief systems. I think that people are afraid of climate change, of dealing with climate change, because their worldview doesn't allow them to. I mean, they understand that something bad is going to happen, but they feel that something worse is going to happen if the status quo changes or if the problem gets resolved. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where people like Kegan, as you pronounce it better than me, have a very good insight, is that sometimes people want to change and they know that changing is better. They have to stop smoking, they have to lose weight, they have to stress less, but they cannot change because something in them, a deeper belief they're not conscious of, is more scary than the thought of smoking and the implications of smoking. And as long as they're not conscious of what is that belief that's holding them hostage for and allowing them to change, even if they know that change is good, they're not going to change because they somehow unconsciously or half consciously believe that if they change, something worse is going to happen. So I think a lot of the status quo is because we are afraid of that, of what may happen afterwards. And of course, there is conflict of interest, very perverse conflicts of interest. And you said peace is boring. I don't know if peace is boring, but yeah, we have seen, I mean, there's so many failed peace processes in Colombia that I think that part of the problem in Colombia was that at some point nobody believed that it could be a peace process. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So, thank you. You're very. We could go on and on. You have a lot to say, and you're very elegant about it, eloquent about it, and no, really. I should also say you speak 3 languages perfectly: French, Spanish, and English.
Thank you.
But as we're winding down, so for people that are listening to this and that are interested in the field of either negotiation, conflict resolution, peace building, any of the above, that's been your negotiation, conflict resolution has been your world for a long time. Any words of advice? Any thoughts that you have about what people might want to be thinking about?
Oh God!
I know I'm asking you these hard questions.
I have my son asking me a question.
I know.
I mean, I think it's a beautiful field. I mean, I think the concepts behind negotiation are just exciting. I mean, I wish more people would learn these skills, because I mean, one thing I have to be fair with myself and with people like you who help me learn these skills, is that if you know how to use them, they're extremely useful. They're extremely useful in every aspect of your life, in your personal life. I mean, I think that the addition for me has to this idea that you have to get your ego out of the equation, because your ego is really, really stupid. And I think for me, probably the hardest thing in applying this skill has to do with my ego. My ego gets in the way. But when I apply them, they're so elegant, they're so powerful. I mean, listening to another person with full presence and really being interested, being serious at understanding their interest and thinking, okay, they have the right to their interest and they may be different than mine. There's a beauty in that, and they're powerful tools. You just have to use them. You just have to use them. And I think what is more frustrating about our job of training people is you train people, they get excited about these concepts, but then they don't use them outside.
Well, so often they're they get put inside what my but a partner of mine calls unliberating structures.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
that then
but
kind
then
of...
you have to be, I mean, I think that what helped me become a good consultant in the field is that I was perseverant. And I remember that Fisher said always go back to interest and stick to interest. I mean, be courageous, stay in interest, and somehow that will work out for you. And I think that's part of my journey has been being perseverant and somehow believing there was something true about this approach to conflict resolution and negotiation. And I love it, and I love teaching, and I will always love teaching it.
Yeah.
And I hope more people would use it.
So we have to stop there, and I really thank you so much. It's just like really, there's like about 5 other shows we could do together. So I hope you'll come back and do this again sometime.
This is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's the first time I have been interviewed in my life, so it's a new experience for me.
You have a lot to say. So I love you, and thank you for doing that. Okay, bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Peace Building Podcast. Check out www.thepeacebuildingpodcast.com for show notes and for more great information and resources. We like your feedback, comments, and suggestions. Please email them to Susan Coleman at susan@thepeacebuildingpodcast.com. And come join us again for next week's episode for more great thinking, innovations, and ideas to take our planet to the next level.